Actually, Nick, I was going to discuss the invasion concept. So,
Actually, okay, go ahead and do that, and then we
okay,
can go back
because
to that.
okay, so David was mentioning. I'm not exactly. I was a little confused by what he said, but um, you
It
know,
was Article 4, Section
no,
4.
Article 4,
States.
Section 4, right,
Uh-huh.
says that the government shall protect the states from invasion, right?
Uh-huh.
Article 1, Clause 10, Section, I'm sorry, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, is it? Says that the states are allowed to, they can defend themselves against invasion or imminent threat of invasion, something like that, right? They
Well,
can't engage in war unless they are invaded, or unless they are invaded or engage or think there's an imminent threat of invasion. So those are the two relevant constitutional provisions. Now, the federal, there are many issues with what Governor Abbott might do. Not clear that he's actually declared an invasion. The main one is that
he did declare it. He did declare it.
okay. The main one is that most of the courts have viewed this federal government clearly has supremacy in immigration. That's been established by many years of case law. So what Abbott is trying,
Ma'am, I think you might be making an error. The judiciary is actually preceded by the constitutions
can
and
I
the
just,
law.
excuse me, you keep
You
interrupting me.
said something that was in error, though.
But you're interrupting me, and I don't agree with you. In other words,
Can you
what you're
just post?
saying,
Can you post the source of what you're using
the
so we
way
can
our
see?
constitutional system has evolved, the judiciary gets to interpret the Constitution, and that becomes what the Constitution is at a given point. Now,
That's
if
what
you
the
want to,
Supreme Court.
The
No, no, no. The
Constitution does
Supreme
not
Court just
evolve.
said that was wrong.
if
The Supreme
if
Court just
if
said it's based on a historical analysis and that the
but
government across the country made a
David,
mistake
you're not
and
letting
they
me
did wrong.
continue.
You're
So
because you're building facts, but you're not being
no, 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 no,
honest.
no, no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, David, I'll let you break it apart
Yeah.
right
Why don't
after.
you
I'm gonna
bring up
let
your
Tara
Okay.
finish,
points
and then you can
Let
break
me
it
get a
apart.
pencil.
No, okay, fine. Get a pencil, knock yourself out. Okay, so sorry. So basically, since Madison v. Marbury, the Supreme Court has been the final say in our system on what the Constitution means. Now, the court has taken the position recently, but this has evolved over years and it changes, that it's what's within the four corners of the Constitution and what was going on at the time that the Constitution was drafted or the amendments were were ratified that is relevant. But it is still the court that makes those decisions. It will look at the legislative history, it will look at the plain text, and to the extent that there is some in matter of interpretation, it makes that interpretation. And what it says is we're doing this in accordance with the Constitution. But individual people don't make up their own definitions of the Constitution, nor do I think there's something like a Platonic ideal out there, which this is what the Constitution means, because at the end of the day, we're all going to disagree on that. So who makes those decisions? So our system has decided that it is the Supreme Court that will make those decisions. Now, what Governor Abbott is doing, he's saying that the federal government has basically not stopped the state from being invaded. So we have the right under um, Article 1 to say that we can declare an invasion or we can engage in war, is what it actually says, because we're being invaded or in imminent danger. The problem with that is sort of twofold to me, but obviously this has not been litigated, I believe, or at least it hasn't gone up to the Supreme Court. But the problem with that is that in essence, the Supreme Court has ruled for many years that the federal government has primacy in immigration. And what Abbott is sort of trying to do is say, well, it's not really immigration, it's really border security. But at the end of the day, the actions that he wants to take relate to immigration, right? You're not going to let people in, you're going to throw people out, etc. So it seems to me that it's something of a disingenuous legal argument. Moreover, when the courts have been faced with arguments that an invasion is happening in this type of context, hasn't been Supreme Court, but the courts that have considered this has said, nah, federal rules, and this is sort of non-justiciable. We're not weighing into this, but basically the feds rule. So I guess my view of this is I'm not saying Abbott might not have arguments, but I think the stronger constitutional arguments are on the side of people who say that he cannot just declare an invasion out of because he wants to. What is an invasion? That's a whole, can of worms. It is basically a group of people coming to the country with antithetical sort of motives to our government. And the thing is, if you look at the people who are asylum seekers, they clearly are not antithetical. They want to be part of our government. So you're really going to have to say it's the drug smugglers bringing in fentanyl. So that's the group of people you're going to have to say are invading. And there is also,
Can I jump in on that, because you said so many things. I got heat exhaustion a year ago. I might not remember everything.
David, you said a lot too, and I tried to make notes, but ultimately I gave up. So maybe you should do that as well, or
But
make
ma'am,
No,
notes.
you
well,
told
okay.
several lies. You said
Go ahead,
that the
David.
court actually gets to make the decision on what is right. That is not in the law anywhere. As a matter of fact, the only thing that a court can do is tell what the law is based on the foundational instrument called the Constitution. This is why the government will say in a court case that is unconstitutional. We, the people, wrote the constitutions to frame government for the courts. And if you look up the Black's Law definition of common law, it'll tell you that it derives its authority solely from usages and customs of immemorial antiquity, or from judgments and decrees of the courts recognizing, affirming, and enforcing such usages and customs. So it's not the judges are making a decision and get to interpret. This is what the Supreme Court said that attorneys have been doing wrong for decades.
No,
The
the Supreme.
judges can
Oh
only
gosh.
say what the written law is. And you didn't show us any source. You didn't read from any legal dictionary, any authority at all when you said that. I'm giving you the Black's Law definition of
I said
common law.
Madison v. Marbury basically established the fact that Supreme Court was allowed to interpret the Constitution.
That's not what it
That's not
said.
accurate.
Marbury versus Madison said that anything that was made that was against what was written in the foundational law called the Constitution is null and void. So when you try to talk about immigration and the courts evolving, that's a lie and a hoax. The courts don't evolve. It is the immemorial antiquity, as I just read you, the law that's been here from the people since the time of the American Revolution. And
Listen, David,
you're
you
not
and
going to show a
I,
single document that says what you say.
you and
So please
I
show us. Please.
disagree. You and I disagree
It's
on
not
how
about
the
disagreeing. I'm reading
Constitution
the
is
book. Can you
interpreted.
show us?
No,
Can
no,
you
no.
show
You
us
and I,
anywhere that says that?
let me just, you and I disagree on what the foundational document might say, right?
No, you didn't show
You,
it to us,
you
is
and
my
I
issue.
will
I don't
disagree
disagree
on
with
whether
you.
Texas, for example, can declare an invasion, right? You and
The
I disagree on that.
Constitution says every state, the legislature or the executive can
No,
declare an invasion. Is that not what we, the people, gave them permission to do,
it
ma'am?
says they can engage in war if they think there's an
No,
invasion. But
ma'am.
whom,
Article 4,
David,
Section 4 says, upon
David,
application of the legislature or the executive, that is the governor. It's in
David,
the text of Article 4, Section 4, and you're purposely omitting it.
Yeah,
Why
David.
don't
I,
Let's
you read
I
the
just,
rest of it?
let's let Ben jump in real quick, and then
I
Tara
just
can
really,
respond.
I just got a one-liner really, because the Constitution is not subjective. It was made to be crystal clear. Our founding fathers literally made it when when the executive branch is derelict of their duties to protect the United States or the individual state itself. That's why this clause is in here. That's what Section 3 says, or excuse me, Clause 3 uh, of the Constitution. And so it's in Article 1. It's very clear. So there's no room to decide that we want to say that the Constitution is this one day and the Constitution is this the other. There's no
listen,
argument here.
no,
The
there
Supreme
is a
there's
total argument that you're
no, there
not.
isn't, because
There is, because you're
because
basically
the
saying,
governor of Texas has
listen. What David just said. Here's what Article 4 says: the United States will guarantee to each state a Republican form of government shall protect each of them against invasion. There's a semicolon, so the next clause is separate. And on application of the legislature or of the executive against domestic violence. So it's
Or
not
the
even
executive.
relating to
The
invasion. It's
governor is
relating.
executive, ma'am. The
Yes,
governor
but
is
he would
executive.
have to make an application first, right?
He did. He declared it. That's all you
That's
have to do, like
fine.
the Declaration of Independence.
And then the United States will say there's no invasion.
You notice you didn't admit that part when you
But
spoke about Article 4, Section 4. You
well,
conveniently left
first
that
of all,
out. Why?
like I said, against domestic violence, I'm not sure. Did he say against domestic violence?
He
I
doesn't
didn't read
have
it.
to say domestic violence when the
No, but
governor
that's what the
has the
government.
power.
That's what the
Ma'am, the
Constitution
governor
specific. Oh
has
my
the
gosh!
power granted by the people in
It
black and white
says
letters that he
it's
can say that there's an invasion. Did it not
it
say that?
says against domestic violence in the clause. Now, I'm
You
not sure
didn't
what he
mention the
actually said.
governor, ma'am.
No,
Ma'am,
no,
you
no.
didn't
It
mention
says
the
the
executive.
governor can make an
Did it say the
application against
executive?
domestic violence. You're misreading it, but it doesn't. Forget it.
Actually, you left it out, ma'am. It just said it.
David, let's just say that you're correct. At the
No,
end
no,
of the
no,
day,
no. It's not about
I
me, ma'am.
don't
I'm
agree
Okay,
with
nothing. What
you.
does the
You don't
document
seem
say?
to
David, you can respond.
understand.
Let Tara go and you can respond. Go ahead.
Okay, so David, we're disagreeing, and that's part of the thing about the Constitution. People will disagree. I'm reading it as a separate clause saying he had to say, if he wants to make an application, he had to say there's domestic violence, which is a whole different concept, right? You're reading it as no, if he wants to say there's an invasion. We're both reading it differently. There is no, like I said, it's not like the Constitution up in the air and everybody agrees on this. They don't. We don't all agree. That's part of the problem. We would be fighting about this forever. We need people to interpret it, and courts are who interprets it, subject to
Mhm.
whatever their particular bents are, which changes over the year. I'm sorry, I don't understand, because if you sit there and say you're right, I know what the Constitution is. It's immutable. It means this and this and this. And I say, no, it means this and this and this because it's subject to interpretation, because that clause there does this, or there's a period here, etc. We are
Mhm.
just going to fight about it, right? I don't agree with you that there is just this immutable truth that you alone know, because you
It's
and
not
I
me
are
alone,
disagree.
ma'am. It's written in the text, and the forefathers of law,
No,
who
no, they
all government
didn't.
officials follow, agree
Listen,
with what's written in the
no.
foundational principles,
What?
which you
Listen to
haven't brought
me.
up.
If they all agreed, we would never have court cases.
That's not true, ma'am. Attorneys have been taught since 1938, when they came with administrative cases, that they can use a different type of law based on statutory fiat. That's why you're getting this thing where you're calling it precedents and case law. You can't bring things that's derogatory to the common law into precedents. So you're trying to speak about something recent and case law and evolving when the fundamental law says you can't do that. You've been indoctrinated, and I can show you in writing where they did it to you. They tell you they did it.
So
So
you're saying that there was never a case before the 1930s where the court just interpreted the Constitution in connection with, they have to have a case, right? There has to
ma'am,
be
you
something.
don't have to
So
have a case. You have to have the words that the people
No,
granted.
David,
Ma'am,
we
I can show you in
listen,
the
we
maxims.
just
Look, ma'am,
disagree
I'll get
completely.
somebody to put it. Look,
Look,
I'll get
we
somebody to put
disagree.
it in the chat
What am I
bubble
going to
right
say?
now.
I will have people who listen to you and they might agree with what you're saying. I think it's nonsense myself. I think the court basically, people bring questions to the court about how do we interpret this, or is this particular statute unconstitutional, or is this state law, maybe does it violate the Constitution? And that is what the court does. We're disagreeing on this. We're not going to resolve this because I don't agree with
But you're
anything you're
wrong,
saying.
because Article 1, Section 10 is very clear that this situation is made in emergency circumstances where he has the executive authority to supersede any court in any situation where there's a threat to the sovereignty and the people and the safety of the people of Texas and the United States. And that's
And
exactly
I
what happened.
disagree. I'm telling you, I don't think it's
It
clear
doesn't
at all.
matter
And
if you
when
Ma'am,
disagree. It is
it
no,
doesn't
literally
when
matter
clear
cases
what
have
you
cut.
come
think.
up,
You're an
that
attorney. You went to law school. You should know this.
yes,
It is
no,
clear cut, black and white.
listen. If when I look at, I've been researching this all day, and when I've looked at people who talk
So you're
about this
not a
legal,
constitutional lawyer.
um, I've been researching this
So you're
particular
not.
issue.
What
I
did
I
you
do
practice in
not
law?
I do not give any information about myself on these
So you're
spaces
not a
because people,
constitutional lawyer. You're not an expert, and you
Define,
have zero idea
wait,
and
wait,
what's going
wait.
on in the board.
Define
you are
research.
perhaps you
Define
are
research.
perhaps an expert on this, real Ben. Are you?
Define,
Wait, wait, ma'am.
Yes.
define research.
Real
If
Ben,
you
are
have
you?
research, why didn't you post any fundamental principles of law, any
David,
maxims, anything from the
okay,
authorities? Why didn't you show us anything?
listen to me.
Yeah,
I
what is
we
research in Tara's world?
What is research in Tira's world? I've
I mean,
read about
I
five
think you should
cases.
give us
I've
full
read every
disclosure,
article I
ma'am.
could pull up, and I already had looked at the Constitution previous to this. But once
What
Governor
part?
Abbott
What
started
part?
making these
What
things,
part? What part of the
Can you give it?
Constitution?
Can you
What part?
please show us?
okay,
Can we
you
humble
know what,
ourselves and let you
Wait,
show us
can we?
so we
Heather?
can have full disclosure?
Yes, hear a
Listen,
question. We'll let Tara respond, and then you guys can jump in. Go ahead, Tara.
listen, we're disagreeing, right? I don't agree with you. I think the Constitution is interpreted by the courts. If you look at case law, you'll see that there have been many cases in which, like, for example, a state will do one thing, and the plaintiff or whoever has lost will bring it to the Supreme Court and say, didn't this violate the US Constitution? And the court will then say, yes, it did, or no, it didn't, right? They will make that determination. They make it all the time. They've been making it for many, many years. Okay. You're somehow suggesting that that there's no reason to bring those cases because we would know the answer because we somehow know the answer out of thin air. We are disagreeing fundamentally about how this works. Okay. And if you
We
don't,
wrote the Constitution. It's not
no,
an
no, no,
opinion.
you didn't write the Constitution. The
The
Constitution was
people
written by
wrote
the
it.
founding fathers, and you were assuming, once again, that there's an immutable truth behind it. Okay. That is your theory, correct?
Well,
And that everybody
they all agree
agrees.
though.
And that
They all
everybody
agree.
agrees, so we don't need a court to interpret it because it's just obvious.
No,
But it
no.
is.
You said the court uses the constitutionality. We, the people, wrote the Constitution, ma'am. You're missing that. The
No,
government didn't write
David,
it. We
I'm
wrote
not
it.
missing what you're saying. I'm saying your way is anarchy because we all disagree on what it
It's
means. For
not. This
example,
is how America was created. We, the
David,
people, wrote the constitutions. We wrote
David,
the declarations. It was
I'll give
us.
you an example. Many people don't until the Supreme Court actually ruled on this. A lot of people didn't think that the right to bear arms was an individual sort of right. Okay,
Yeah, but
it
it's
was
written in the text.
it was in context of the militia, but that had not been
No,
assumed for many,
ma'am,
many
that's
years
wrong.
because there's a
That's
comma.
wrong.
You see,
That's
that's what you're,
wrong.
but don't you see? You're just saying you're
No, I'm
wrong,
not just
I'm
saying.
right.
Each of
No,
the
you
state
are.
constitutions say that we have a right to guns to protect
You
ourselves against
listen
bad
to me.
government and other things. That's what the
Okay.
state constitutions say. And the first 13 colonies became states and they created the
All right,
federal
Nick,
map.
I
So
can't
you're
do this
backwards.
anymore. This is ridiculous. If people don't understand, we have a fundamental disagreement here, and
Can you just
it
show
doesn't,
sources
no, no,
though?
no, no,
If you
no.
show, I will agree with you if you show a source, but you're
What
not
Yeah,
showing a
okay,
source?
all
single
right, yeah,
What
yeah,
source.
actually
I agree.
source?
The address is
Nick,
on my page. Go on.
could you give us the name of a school that has been shut down? Shut down specifically.
Tara, an
And how
entire wing of Chicago O'Hare
I
Airport
said
is
New
shut
York.
down.
I
If
Just
said
so
I
you
New
need
know,
York.
to, yes,
I said
I
New
will.
O'Hare
York, Heather.
Airport.
I'm in New York. I'm asking. He said New
Look,
York,
unlike
correct?
most people, I will actually look up the name of the school and will give you a source because it seems like,
Yeah.
a lot of arguments that are being made, especially by a bunch of the leftist panels, they refuse to give sources. So I will source you the name of the
Well, it's
school
just funny that
if you give
Tira's
me
not giving
2 minutes.
sources for any of the research she's done, but then she demands them when
Heather,
someone
why
talks
don't you
about
go and pray about the
firsthand
plane?
witnesses.
I hope you do well
Hey,
in the
Tara,
plane.
I really would like the sources too. I'll give money to any foundation for children you want
I
me
just
to if
think
you
it's
provide
funny.
I
sources.
just
Yeah, I know, right?
Tara, I'll send
No, but wait, wait,
$100
wait,
for
wait,
those
wait.
resources
Let
though.
me
Please
just
don't
say,
forget.
David, hang
David,
on real quick.
we had
The
this
thing I
discussion. We
posted, the
disagree.
thing I posted.
Hey, Nick,
So,
the only thing I wanted to say is Virginia Constitution, Bill of Rights, Section 3 says that in any government, we the people have the right to get rid of government officials, to reform the nation if we have to, if the government should be found not in maladministration, but in the danger of maladministration. It's not that we have to wait until government completely collapses. We have the right when we see things just being handled in a way we don't like as the people, Article 1, Section 3 of Virginia Constitution, we can remove them all, change things at will. That's our inherent right sworn to by the government.